Be practical in your approach to developing a style guide. Make sure that your needs are covered in how the style guide is prepared, and then hopefully it gives you the foundation moving forward that will minimize the confusion and kind of clear up your brand, paving the way for the future.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, and today's guest is someone that I dragged kicking and screaming into the room to do the podcast with me, and I'm really excited to have
Somebody
him on.
Please help me. I'm tied up.
So he's figuratively tied up. He is not literally tied up, and I just want to make sure that I can clarify that for everybody that's listening today. But my guest today is actually my business partner, and he considers himself to be somewhat of a behind-the-scenes guy. His name is Colby Remund, and he is our Chief Creative Officer at Relic. And with all of the discussions that we've had with lots of our guests, I felt like it was really important for us to have a conversation about creative and design. You know, we've talked about digital marketing, and we've talked about some major campaigns that have been done by different destinations. We've talked about rebranding. We've talked about all kinds of different stuff, but we haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of the creative, and I think that's what we're going to do today. So, Colby, welcome to the show, my friend.
I would say thank you, but I only half feel that. But I'm here nonetheless.
Okay, Colby's enthusiasm, it may be radiating, and if you can't hear it, just know that it's coming, okay? So that was Colby's excited face that you just heard. All right, Colby, to kind of break the ice with all our guests, there's a question we always ask, and to get started, I just want to ask you, what's your dream destination? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that I don't think about a lot because it's kind of, some of those things are a little bit lofty, but I would say that probably a couple of places. Me and my wife, we talk about it occasionally, and they're places that are far away, but my wife happens to be part Tahitian. Her grandma's Tahitian, and we'd love to go to Tahiti for one. And then I think Europe would be interesting as well. We have family, obviously, descendants from Europe, and Switzerland is a place that we would really like to visit. So there's a couple there. Might take me a while to get to both of those, but yeah, those are two that I think would be really fun.
I think those are two awesome destinations, neither of which I have been to. Colby, one thing I've learned about you over time is that family is pretty important to you. So it's not surprising to hear you say that the places that you would visit is kind of family, historical places for your family. Is there specific things about the culture and history of either of those places that really appeals to you as it pertains to your family?
Gosh, that's a good question. I don't know if there's anything that I can think of that really stands out. I mean, Switzerland has always been very interesting to me because it's very similar to my hometown of Midway, Utah, and one of the reasons that my ancestors settled in Midway, Utah when they came to the States was because it kind of resembled Switzerland. And so I think that there's just a little bit of I don't know, the fact that I haven't been to Switzerland makes me kind of feel like there's unfinished business, I guess you could say. So that one, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that Switzerland sounds kind of appealing to me, but I'm not sure about Tahiti. That one's a different one. I'm not really sure.
Still got some digging to do there to figure that out.
Well, one thing actually that I just thought of is my wife, because her family's from Tahiti, she says, I mean, in Tahitian culture, I guess one interesting thing is that a lot of their records are kept orally, and so they pass things on by speech, and it's not as documented as we have, but they do have, I think they have property there somewhere, and so it would be interesting to kind of go try to track that down and figure out where it is. And
who knows, maybe it's beachfront.
It could be, right? I mean, that would be amazing. But that's just another thing we thought would be really cool to try to figure out. So
great. Colby, you and I, over time, have been to a lot of cool places within the United States, and our job here as destination marketers has taken us all over the country. You and I found ourselves in some interesting places. We just got back this weekend from Knoxville, Tennessee, and I just want to hear kind of your reaction to the town, the visit, the experience, because I think you and I were both pretty blown away by that place.
Yeah, it was amazing. I haven't been to a ton of places in the South, but a few of the places that I've been have been interesting experiences, but that one really stands out. Knoxville was amazing. The people there, is probably one of the main takeaways that I have. They're just so kind, warm, down to earth. The city itself is right by the river. I think is it the Tennessee River? I don't know which river.
I'm actually not sure which river.
Yeah,
it is
but it was.
either.
I mean, we were there in the city, and the river that goes through there. It's really pretty. Rolling green hills. They have Market Square in the middle of the city that's got some amazing things that you can do at night, places to eat. It was just a really, really cool place. We walked around the town, rode the trolley. Really good experience, and definitely a place that really left an impression on me. I was telling people from Knoxville that I was kind of developing a little bit of a crush on their city, and so that's kind of how I described it.
Well, every destination has a brand, right? And there's some destinations where the brand is really defined by the experiences and the places that you visit. This is probably the place that I've gone to that was most, maybe other than Fiji, but that was most defined by the people, because the people had such an impact on the experience. I mean, we went to watch BYU play Tennessee, and for those of you that aren't football fans, BYU somehow at the last minute pulled out this crazy victory against Tennessee. And as we're walking out, we have Tennessee fans coming up to us and saying, "Great game. Thank you so much for coming. We're so glad to have you. We hope you'll come back." And these are people that just had their, 100,000 people in a stadium that just had their hearts ripped out because it looked like they were going to win the whole game. And here they are coming up and showing that Southern hospitality to us even in defeat. I was pretty blown away.
Me too, man. And what was interesting about another thing that was interesting about that experience is before the game, we actually had received a little bit of a warning from a very nice Tennessee fan. They said you'll be fine. Just be careful around the people in the white and orange checkered overalls. But the funny thing is after BYU won the game, one of the first people to find me and congratulate us on the victory was one of those students in the white and orange checkered overalls, which I thought was incredible. Very nice, very kind, and obviously they were devastated because they've had a couple really rough weeks as far as football goes, but just the people were awesome.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm going to try to get the director of the CVB in Knoxville to join us for our program, because they've done a lot in addition to talking to people within the community about being hospitable and that Southern hospitality to make the city really tourism friendly. Whether it's the free trolley, they have these like jacked up golf carts that are called Joyride or something like that, and they're driving around town taking people where they need to go. It's almost like a dumbed down taxi or something like that, but really unique things that were specific to Knoxville. And I just want to talk a little bit more about their brand. I mean, do you want to share a little bit with us, Colby, about the experience we had in the restaurant? And the restaurant was called Stock and Barrel on Market Square, when we were asking for the dessert menu and the experience we had with our waiter there.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, we were ready for good food, and we definitely found it at Stock and Barrel. And so, we had a good dinner and definitely weren't done after that. We felt like we wanted to venture into dessert. And when we asked him for some options and maybe the menu back, he proceeded to do something that I don't think I've experienced anywhere else. And he referred us to an ice cream place that was about 2 blocks over, called Cruise Farm.
Cruise Farms.
Yeah, Cruise Farms. Yeah, we'd all just kind of sat there in shock because they clearly had good shakes, and another option that I was really looking at was like a peanut butter Oreo pie or something. But when he referred us over there, we all had to stop and have a little chat with him because we were so impressed. When we talk about destination marketing, I think that's one of the things that maybe gets overlooked a little bit is really coming together on a lot of levels and unifying on the destination level and making sure that even at the grassroots level, the employees are invested in making sure that the people that come there have an authentic experience that's memorable, and maybe not letting themselves get in the way of that experience to an extent. And so that was one thing that we thought was accomplished that night, and something that he was probably, I don't know if he was maybe trained to do that or if he was just being himself and making sure that the things that he enjoyed in the destination were getting passed on to us, but it was just really impressive.
It felt like it was part of the culture to make sure that the guest has the best experience they can. That's kind of the vibe that I got. I would be shocked if he was trained to tell people, don't get dessert, go to Cruz Family Farm. So one of the things that I wanted to do on this podcast is say, if you're ever in Knoxville, you have to go to Stock and Barrel. They are the best burgers with unique variations to what you would normally expect from a burger. And I want to make sure that at least one more meal gets purchased at Stock and Barrel because of the experience that our friend, our waiter, gave us there, so that they can make any money back that they would have lost by not selling us a dessert that night.
I think that's a good idea. I agree with that 100%.
Well, we didn't come on the episode today to talk about Knoxville exclusively. In fact, I want to have a follow-up episode talking a little bit about Knoxville. I may even try to get our waiter on the show to ask him where in the world that training came from. I got his contact info. More to come on that. I'll try to reach out to him and see if we can get him on the show. But I want to talk a little bit about design today, Colby, and some of the key and core principles of design. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, first, your background, how you got into design, what led you to where you are today, and your role here at Relic today?
Sure. I mean, design has been something that's been with me since high school. As I was going through classes in high school, I just didn't know what I really felt like I wanted to get into. I always enjoyed art, but ended up finding graphic design, and that kind of carried with me throughout my college experience until I was exploring the different avenues within graphic design and ended up in the advertising program at BYU. And so that was kind of my education. I went through the program as a creative. They had an account side and a creative side, and the creative side was obviously the thing that I was most drawn to. And so I got my degree in communications with an emphasis in advertising, going through creative track, which gave me a graphic design minor.
We may want to tell people the funny circumstances under which we met at BYU.
Oh gosh,
well.
Yeah, you'd probably be better at telling that story than I would. So I would defer to you on that one.
So when I was at BYU, I had finished up my advertising classes and happened to be taking an English class that was like one of my very last requirements before graduating, and my little sister just happened to be just barely getting into college at the time, and she happened to need the same English class. Now that might tell you at what level I was at, that in my senior year I was taking the same level English class that my sister, who was just getting into school, needed to take. So I was a little behind the crowd, but that's okay. Anyway, in that class, we had a teacher that was a little bit obsessed with Survivor and actually ended up being a contestant on the show. And it resulted in a lot of laughs in the class. Just kind of, we all found it really interesting how much she cared about that show, Survivor. And so anyway, there was this guy that was sitting and at the time he had hair. But there was this guy.
Oh man, the hair jokes on this show, they never let up.
He's sitting a couple rows in front of us, and I could tell that he ended up giggling a lot at the same times that I would when certain things in the class would happen. And so he and I kind of started joking back and forth with each other. He got to know me and my sister. And so I got to chatting with him, and it turned out to be Colby, and I asked him what he was studying, and he said he had just gotten into the advertising program. So we made the connection through the advertising program at BYU because we both went through the program just a little bit staggered, but we actually met in a random English class with an interesting teacher in kind of a weird building in the corner of the campus of BYU, right?
Yeah, it's very, very unexpected, I think, that we were both from the advertising program and the relationship continued. It was pretty random.
So I interrupted kind of your background and what led you to where you are today. Sorry.
So yeah, I mean, I went through the ad program, and after we'd met, Adam basically recruited me out of school to join him at an ad agency in St. George, one that I'm sure listeners have heard about on this show. And that's the same ad agency that we have now, that we ended up purchasing. But yeah, that was kind of my path. And then from there, the agency at the time was very small, a lot smaller than it is today. And
I think there was 5 of us.
Yeah, it was a pretty small team, but we quickly found out that we could probably do some cool things, and some things probably needed to change. And so I think within few months, I was kind of leading the creative team, and so that was kind of my path to where I'm at today. So,
and tell us about your role today, what your team looks like, and some of the projects that you guys are working on.
Yeah, so I'm the chief creative officer here at Relic, and our current staff, we've got 3 art directors that I manage, and we also have a web developer as well that gets our web projects done. And so my 3 art directors each manage a stack of clients, and then I handle a lot of the new business and a lot of the Relic brand stuff, and I have my own stack of responsibilities with clients as well, and that's kind of how we're structured.
So in 2012, we start doing the Cedar City Tourism Bureau's advertising, and that was kind of our first foray into destination marketing. What do you feel like we've learned, especially as it pertains to creative, from 2012 until today?
Wow, there's a lot of time there, a lot of hours of work and effort, and I would say a lot of learning experiences, I guess is the way you could put it. I think that some of the most profound things that we've learned is probably starts with just being true to a process, and I think that those processes probably vary throughout the industry just a little bit. A lot of them begin with research, and we try to do that as well. It's so important that I think this is something that you've reviewed on the show before, Adam, but who the destination is for one, but when you're talking about messaging and delivering a message to people, it's people, time, and place, right? Where you're trying to get them the right message at the right time in the right place. And so, I think that a lot of our efforts over the years have helped us accomplish that. And like I said, there's been some bumps in the road where we've had to learn things the hard way. And I think that you have to be very adaptable. And we've been able to do that and made some changes to our process that kind of help our creative and our creative strategy and our process and the way that we approach things. It's kind of helped that evolve and stay up to date and stay current, and I think that we continue to do that. And so those are some of the things I think that we've learned.
Great. So when it comes to design, one thing that I saw coming into the industry, and you and I have talked about this a lot, so this will be familiar to you, but everybody originally had a collage, right, of all the different activities there could possibly be to do in their destination. There was like 17 photos on a banner ad that was going on a website, right? And It was very difficult to see what that destination was when we come into a destination. And that seems to be kind of the default, especially with a destination that maybe is still trying to get up to speed in their marketing and get more sophisticated. So in looking at that and where we kind of focus today, what did you see then compared to kind of what you're seeing now?
Well, yeah, I think that there's always going to be an element of that. It's really hard as a destination to have a set amount of money that you've allocated for advertising, and at everyone's heart as a destination marketer, you want to be able to bring everybody into your destination. You want the whole world to come, and you try so hard to make sure that every little thing in your destination is front and center. And so I think that's kind of, a lot of times the reasoning behind sort of an overwhelming approach when it comes to advertising everything that you can to everybody. And so I think that one thing that we've tried to take on recently is just making sure that we're focusing in on personas. We're establishing those personas early and getting to know them kind of on a personal level so that we can really understand what they like, what they enjoy, what they want in a destination experience, and then build our creative strategy and our media strategy around that and try to really speak to those people in the right ways.
Great. Thank you. I think a lot of what we've seen, especially on the design side over the years, is people aren't necessarily defining their target audience well enough beforehand, and then they try to jump into design. Like you said, trying to market everything to everyone. And we've really worked hard over the last several years to build very clear and defined target personas for each of the destinations that we work with, that even include an image, a name, demographic information, psychographic information, decision-making preferences, activities that they like. How has that change? How has that addition of detailed personas helped you in developing brands and campaigns for these destinations that we work with?
Well, I think for one, it narrows the playing field a lot. I think a lot of times people that get involved in design and creativity a little bit as on the destination marketing level, not that they're designers and creatives by trade, but that try to get involved in the decision making. A lot of times I feel like it's just grasping at things randomly. And when you have personas that are established, that are really kind of well crafted, then what it does is it brings everything into a lot smaller of a bucket. And you're able to kind of really narrow the focus and have a lot easier path forward, establishing your creative strategy and sort of the visuals and the overall look and feel of the brand moving forward on a campaign level. It just makes it a lot easier to make those decisions. It gives you a clear path forward, a little bit of a roadmap that you can follow. And I think that's really the benefit of building off of the personas.
Yeah, I think it's funny because a lot of people, when we'll first start working with them, will ask for some information. Okay, who specifically are we talking to? And their answer in a lot of cases is, well, look, you're the expert. I want you to figure it out, right? And one thing these personas do is they kind of, like you said, they narrow the focus. And some people would say, oh man, well, you're eliminating so many design opportunities, but at the same time, it's almost harder. Well, it is harder to design with no direction than a very narrow and clear direction. My only question for you is, when does it go too far? When does we're giving you all of this direction of what needs to be done? When is that? Where's the line between information that gives you the ammunition you need to create a great campaign or brand to, okay, now you're trying to tell me exactly where to put the logo and what the typography should look like. You know what I mean?
Not that that's ever happened.
No,
right?
no,
Of
we've
course
never
not.
had that experience.
No, I think that there's, some interesting things you said there. Like, I think that as I try to put myself in the shoes of a destination marketer, like, it's obviously there's a lot at stake. There's usually a big budget. There's usually a lot of stakeholders behind the scenes that are very interested in how things are going. And so I think it can be a little bit scary to for one, hire an ad agency and have them not hold the keys, but basically have so much power in kind of the direction that they start to steer the ship. And obviously you're at the helm still as the destination marketer, but you still have to kind of let them have a pretty big role in where things are going. And so I think that basically there's a lot of trust, I think, that and a little give and take that has to happen between the agency and the destination. But yeah, I would say that like I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but like I think that it's nice as if you can really iron out the right process with establishing the personas. I think that there definitely needs to be a little bit of a line that's drawn in the sand between how much you're allowing as a creative in my shoes some of those decisions to be influenced by personal opinion. And we try to talk through some of those things and make sure that we're adhering to correct design principles in terms of scale and hierarchy and things like that, so that we're communicating the message in the right way.
You used some words there I want to follow up on.
Oh boy, here we go.
But we will. Go ahead.
But anyways, like I think that there's a lot of things that you probably should trust your agency with, and that's not to say that you shouldn't have an opinion, but I think that there's a reason that they're doing what they're doing, and in most cases they've spent a lot of time training and a lot of time getting education and being up to date on design trends and things like that. And so I think that there can be maybe a little bit of wiggle room in where that line is drawn in the sand. Maybe it moves an inch or two here and there, but I think that it's important to make sure that you do trust your agency with some of those decisions.
And I think you're right, though. It's a balance, right? It's some give and take, and usually with communication up front, you kind of find out where that happy medium is. So I think that's a good point. You talked a little bit about some of the training that not just our agency, but agencies in general will send their team through. I know you on an annual basis go to a pretty important conference called Adobe Max, where you learn kind of the latest creative trends that are going on and design trends and Adobe's new software updates and things like that, tools that are available. How has that training benefited you in leading the design team here at Relic?
I think the best way I could sum up an answer for that question is probably just with the word inspiration. Like, the conference itself is pretty spectacular on so many levels. There's a lot of breakout sessions, courses where you can learn new skills and develop skill sets in new software that they release and updates to the software that make a lot of the things that we do very easy. Some really just incredible things that I probably shouldn't get into too far because it's hard to understand some of the things that they're able to do and automate. Really, like, it's just spectacular. But really, yeah, I think the main takeaway for me every year is just feeling inspired. We had the opportunity a couple of years ago to have John Favreau, the director of Iron Man. So he was there a couple years ago and spoke, and last year it was Ron Howard, which is great because I get made fun of sometimes, but I'm an Andy Griffith fan. Little Ronnie Howard running around with Andy Griffith, like that. Having him in the room to kind of share his experiences in directing film, and it's just, the whole conference is just really inspirational, and obviously you come away with it with expanded skill sets, expanded lists of tools that you need to follow up on, and really just ways that you can grow your creative capabilities and better service your clients.
Would you recommend Adobe Max for teams with an in-house creative team, for destinations with an in-house creative team?
Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, I would recommend it for anybody that's basically facing some of the challenges that come with overseeing the development of advertising campaigns, being involved in art direction to some extent, and I think that destination marketers definitely get involved in some of that. And so it's extremely valuable. Obviously, I think on the list of conferences that you have to attend as a destination marketer every year is probably not super high on the priority list because there's so many. But Adobe Max it's an amazing learning experience, and I mean, I think that last year there was 19,000 attendees. It was
Wow.
It's a massive conference. International people from all over the world are attending this, and so, yeah, it's a very, very good experience.
Great. And I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I thought that might be a valuable tidbit for our listeners. I want to kind of pull it back specific to design. We've had a lot of people want us to take a look at their brand or to develop new campaigns for them. And our first question in most of those cases is, well, let us take a look at your style guide. Why is a style guide critical for a destination to have?
It's just, I think for me, it's just so comforting to know that there's some kind of a roadmap, a little bit of a roadmap as to how the touch points of your brand should look and feel. And when we're talking about a style guide, we're talking about your logo and how your logo, how the different compositions of your logo, how your lockups are, like horizontal stack or vertical stack, and how those are basically to be unchanged. They aren't to be altered in any way, leaving enough white space around your logo. A lot of those things are established in a style guide. You can get into typography and font usage. You can get into types of photography. You can get in. Obviously, you establish your colors in the style guide, and so for us, I mean, especially with destination marketing, it's been a rare case when we come across a destination that has a really well-established style guide. It does happen, but I think it happens a lot less often than we would like, and so really it gives us some direction. And even if the style guide does need to be updated I think that just the fact that you have one is a very, very valuable resource for your team and for the vendors you work with, and really for everyone that's kind of involved in your organization.
Okay. I got another question for you, Colby, surprisingly enough, since this is a podcast and I'm interviewing you.
Very strange.
So let's say I'm a destination marketer listening to this podcast. I've got a style guide that was established about 7 years ago. Full disclosure, I probably haven't looked at it a whole lot over the years. What danger am I in? What could be happening?
Well, I mean, obviously, like if the style guide isn't really being adhered to, like I think that the kind of the sad part about that is the touch points of your brand are probably slipping in a lot of ways, and so the word I like to use most often is confusion. The style guide really helps you fight confusion. When I say confusion, I'm talking about maybe your logo, maybe somebody snuck a color or two into your logo that you just didn't really notice, and it starts to look different. Your brand starts to look a little bit different than it did a year ago. And maybe somebody stretched your logo or decided that they would rotate it a little bit. And I'm not saying that this is stuff that happens often, but I mean, it does happen, like there might be a vendor that decided to take a little bit of creative liberty in how they displayed your logo on a banner. And if it tends to change enough, basically it just starts to inject confusion into your brand. People will see it one way, the right way, and then they'll see it portrayed a little bit different way. And it's like, well, wait, is that the same organization? Like, are they affiliated in any way? Like, that looks a little bit different. And so really, I think that that's one of the biggest things that a style guide accomplishes, is it gives a clear path forward as to what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and how that is going to be perceived by, obviously, in best case scenarios, your personas. And if you get into that confusion game, like it's kind of hard to dig yourself out of it.
Yeah, we worked with, years ago, we worked with a Utah destination that I think they had 7 logos at one point in time, and they recently went through a rebrand and consolidated everything, and now they have a style guide. But confusion is a great word, because I start to think about all the different ways, especially a destination's brand can get fragmented. And if your style guide, for example, doesn't have guidance for how, or guidelines for how the logo should be used on a sign, well, guess what? You've got pole banners, you've got billboards, you've got monument signs, you've got street signs in some cases, wayfinding signs, and you could have 5 or 6 different variations of your logo on all those signs, and it results in a complete fragmentation of your brand.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Well, so okay, what's the process then, Colby? I mean, when you're creating a style guide, how do I know if I've got a good style guide? How do I know if it needs to be revisited? What are some of the key things to look for?
Well, I mean, I think from a practicality standpoint, I think it's important for a destination marketer, especially on the state level. I think that there's obviously a lot more money that they can pump into establishing a really, really detailed brand book or style guide, whatever you want to call it. For smaller destinations, I think that there's a lot more value in making sure that it's solid and it's foundational and it's simple. Like you can get lost in developing so many different nooks and crannies of a style guide. I mean, some bigger companies have style guides that are 100 pages long. But I don't think that is necessarily makes sense for destination marketing. It would be great, but it just gets really expensive. And so I think that be practical in your approach to developing a style guide. Make sure that your needs are covered in how the style guide is prepared, and then hopefully it gives you the foundation moving forward that will minimize the confusion and kind of clear up your brand, paving the way for the future.
Great. You mentioned a word that I wanted to come back to, and that's hierarchy. You mentioned it earlier, and I said I was going to come back to it. Hierarchy has actually proven over the years to me to be a critical component of design that gets a little bit overlooked at times or neglected. Let's talk about hierarchy, the importance of it, and how you approach hierarchy.
Yeah, I think that really, I think the reason that that's important is because a lot of times you'll see advertising that isn't sort of adhering to the principle of hierarchy, and it's almost like everything that you're seeing that you're trying to digest visually is commanding your attention. And when you talk about hierarchy and trying to establish a piece of communication that visually is easy to digest and looks clean and good, I guess I could say, it's making sure that elements that sort of need to be seen first are visible and clear, and elements that are maybe of a little bit lesser importance are obviously appear smaller. And so I think the battle that we get into a lot of times is it's hard to determine sometimes what's important, what needs to be seen, what needs to be most visible, and a lot of times I think that we get into the make the logo bigger battle, right? Where it's like make the logo as big as you can, like that. There's a meme or a video or something on the internet that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Look up the YouTube video, "Make my logo bigger, cream," and you'll get a little laugh there.
Yeah, so that's the fight you end up with sometimes. But one of the things that I've learned over the course of the past 8 years or so is that I think the consumer a lot of times is a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and I think that they a lot of times can connect the dots. If the logo is a little bit smaller in the corner, I think that we need to trust that if it's something that they care about and it's a visual that they're resonating with, that might be a persona that you're trying to target, then if they're resonating with it, they're gonna seek out, they're going to be proactive and try to find where this destination is, where this beautiful picture is, where this.
So you're saying if the creative is effective, the size of the logo doesn't necessarily matter as much because you've drawn them in and they're going to try to figure out where it is.
Yeah, and I think within reason, right? Like,
it shouldn't be a dot?
if there's a pinpoint logo in the corner, I think that's a problem, obviously. But yeah, within reason, I think that's the pushback we would get there. But can't
you solve most hierarchy issues with a big yellow starburst? Won't that solve most?
Only in car delership advertising.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
You're good. Where were we?
Understand, I give Colby a hard time a decent amount of the time.
It's not just me. I think that's a skill that Adam has.
So we're probably going to start wrapping up the episode a little bit here, but as far as destination marketing, what are some of the mistakes or the kind of normal mistakes or common mistakes out there that you see people make from a design standpoint?
From a design standpoint, that's tough. I think that I see a lot of great things, like a lot of things that are done really well. Obviously, there's some very powerful agencies that are doing some amazing things in the tourism space, and so I see a lot of good. I do see a lot of things that maybe I don't know. It would be interesting sometimes to get a look behind the curtain. Because there are times when you see things that just don't seem to be adhering to design principles. You're not getting enough contrast in places. There's a lot of competing elements, the hierarchy, that conversation comes into play. So, yeah, there's just times when I see ads that might be a little bit harder to connect with, where you think that who's behind this, who's the one that's
what thought process
went
into this?
Who's the one that's kind of driving the ship here? And so I think that what that leads me to believe is that in a lot of cases, budget constraints and other things might be putting destinations in a little bit of a tough spot, and they're just trying to kind of make their way on their own. And I can understand times when that might need to happen, but I also think there's a great deal of value in having professionals do the work that they've been trained to do. And so, I would say that's probably the biggest one, is just making sure that the stuff that really, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of money involved in advertising for your destination, and you want that money to be spent well. And there's a lot of ways that money could not be spent well, and creative and making sure that creative looks good is one of the ways that the money might not be being spent.
Yeah, I mean, advertising is getting the right message to the right people at the right time, but it starts with the right message.
Yeah.
And if you don't nail that, you're getting the wrong message to the right people at the right time, and that's not going to help you at all.
Well, and even if it is the right message and the way the message looks isn't super great, then that's probably going to be a barrier.
Yep.
So
a couple of additional mistakes that I think I've seen that you'll probably agree with me. We mentioned the collage thing, which seems to be kind of a common thing that happens in the industry. So if you find yourself making collages of all the different things that there are to do in your destination on an ad, I'd say you probably ought to take a look at your design. I think typography is something that really gets overlooked in the destination marketing industry. A lot of people will choose, for example, if you're outdoor or if your destination has a lot of outdoor experiences, the immediate go-to is to use kind of that rugged-looking font. I don't know the name of it, but it's very, very common in destination marketing. And so it's kind of, how can you differentiate yourself with typography? And I know typography is important to you, Colby. What are your thoughts there?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's a very important thing, mainly because, and I should have probably mentioned this earlier when we were talking about maybe mistakes that I've seen, but it's one of those things where if typography is and the way that and when I'm talking about typography, there's a lot to it. Like obviously there's in advertising design, there's a lot of headers and subheads, and then there's body copy, and there's other things that need to be designed and laid out in a way that's visually appealing. But if those things, for me, because I've kind of really kept my eye on typography for a long time, if those things are off, it's pretty easy to see that there's probably not a professional professional designer designing these ads. And
which
so
does what to your brand?
It just makes it look cheap. It makes it look not sophisticated, harder to connect with. And when it comes to typography and type lockups and ways that you can communicate a message visually, there's a lot of really cool things that you can do that will help kind of accomplish that goal with typography.
Great. Last question, Colby. Regardless of destination marketing, so don't limit yourself to destination marketing in answering this question. What is your favorite campaign that's out there right now, and why?
That's a really hard question. You know why that's so hard, especially if it's not specific to destination marketing, is
Do you want me to narrow it?
I don't watch a lot of broadcast TV, and so I don't get a lot of the TV stuff.
Let's narrow it down.
Why don't you narrow just a hair?
Destination marketing. Favorite destination campaign out there?
Am I allowed to go to 18 Summers? I don't know if I can, because we've just hammered that. So it's just so great. It's such a great campaign.
A lot of our listeners that are fairly recent may not have gone back that far anyway in the podcast.
Yeah, as a father, it's as a dad, it's hard to think of any other campaign than that one. 18 Summers done by Idaho was just it. And the hard thing is like it really connected with me, but I've done nothing to correct my course in that 18 summer.
but it did affect you.
It will. I think it'll. We're building a house right now, and I'm trying to build it. And so like this summer has not been one of those summers where I've been good at that. But I think that it's left enough impact for me that in the future it will be something that I focus on. Another one that I just thought of, and I don't know if we can technically go here, is just because this destination is, I don't know if this campaign is specific to this destination or if it's just more of a kind of a feel-good campaign, but Disney did the Dream Big Princess campaign, which I thought was amazing. And that's been a year or two in the past, but I got a daughter now, and so that one really kind of starts to pull on the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, that goes back a little bit. We talked about kind of family is really important to you, and so the campaigns that have really stuck with you as family oriented, I find that interesting because what's happened there is we identified one of your core guiding principles, right, is family, and that's why you want to visit the destinations that you talked about. And the advertising messages that speak directly to you are related to family. And so it just goes back to nailing your personas. If you know what's important to your audience, your message will resonate. So it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And yeah, I think we've touched on authenticity on this podcast a couple times as well. And it's just so critical to be authentic. I think it's easy as a destination to try to be everything to everybody, and when you do that, the authenticity factor just starts to diminish, and it's going to be really hard to make impact and resonate with the people that are most likely to visit if you're not authentic.
Absolutely. Colby, this wasn't so bad, was it?
Ask me tomorrow. There might be some recovery time.
You know what? I appreciate you coming on, Colby, because I know that this isn't your natural habitat here to be talking. You know, I think one of the reason Colby doesn't mind being my friend is that he doesn't have to do a whole lot of the talking.
There might be some truth there, yeah.
But Colby, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right, everybody, a couple reminders. As we do every time, there is a LinkedIn group called Destination Marketers that I want you to go on right now, request access. We'll approve you if you're a destination marketer, and we want you to give of your knowledge, right? You all have unique knowledge that you've gained as destination marketers, and what we're trying to do is help all of us get better and grow in our roles in destination marketing together. And we've created this group as a platform to do that. So please go on and join that group. The other reminder I want to give you is that reviews are really important to help us continue to climb up the charts and be more accessible to destination marketers. So we'd really appreciate a review if it's good. If not, fill out our comment form on our website and let us know. But don't leave a review. No, I'm just kidding. Leave us a review. Tell us honestly what you think. And we appreciate you listening on a weekly basis. Hopefully you're finding this valuable. The listenership goes up and up and up every week. And so we all indications are that it's going well. So we really appreciate your loyalty and listening to us. And we'll continue to pump out content and get you content that is relevant to what you're struggling with now. And here's an idea. If you are struggling with anything right now, post it in that LinkedIn group and we'll get it as a topic. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon.